It's time for another edition of Why Are You Awake? Paul Farahvar here, your host. This week we have comedian Andy Hendrickson. Make sure you follow him on Instagram. He's hilarious. He's one of my favorite comedians and favorite human beings. Make sure you follow him on Instagram and see him live wherever he goes. Follow me on Instagram as well at Paul Farahvar. And follow me and check out my live shows at paulfcomedy.com. If you're listening to this podcast, please go over and watch it on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/paulfcomedy. I've been up all night editing this video. It's 6:30 in the morning, for Christ's sake. So go watch it. Subscribe, even if you're listening, wherever you are, subscribe. Give us a review. And if you send me a review that you did, wherever you did it, at Apple, wherever, 5-star review, I will send you a Why Are You Awake lapel pin. You will be the coolest person in town. There's only limited edition. The only people who have these are currently former guests and super fans. You could be one of them. So send me a review, pfarahvar@gmail.com. Email it to me and I'll send you a pin. Shows, paulfcomedy.com. I will be at Little Rock, Arkansas tonight in just a few hours at the Looney Bin in Arkansas. I'll be there all week till Saturday, January 25th. I'll be at McCurdy's in Sarasota Sunday, January 26th. And then I'll also be there 29th and 30th, headlining there all week. So come see me there if you're in Sarasota. I'll be back in Dallas at Hyenas, opening for my friend Dave Landau, February 7th and 8th. And then I'll be back in Chicago at the Improv in Schaumburg with my friend Brett Ernst, February 14th through the 16th. I will be in Zanies in Old Town on March 9th with my friend Paul Ollinger. And the night before, we'll be in Hobart, Indiana, doing two Pauls, one show, both of those shows. We'll also be doing a pop-up show in Downers Grove as well on that Friday, March 7th. I'll be in Florida at Side Splitters on March 22nd at Side Splitters in Tampa. Make sure you get your tickets for that because I think it will sell out. It's a Saturday. In April, I'll be headlining at the DC Loft. I'll be headlining in Boston and in Florida. So go to my website, Paul F. Comedy, for upcoming dates and get your tickets to those shows. I also have my show Stand Up, Sit Down the last 2 Mondays of every month at the Laugh Factory in Chicago. If you follow me on Instagram, I will give you free tickets. Just say you listen to the podcast or watch the podcast and you'll get those tickets. Also, check out our sponsors. Scott Shapiro has been practicing law for over 25 years in Chicago. He does it all, from workers' compensation to personal injury, employment issues, and even entertainment law and contract needs. If you need a lawyer, call my friend Scott. 312-648-8800. That's 312-648-8800. Or you can email him at scott@scottshapirolegal.com. Tell him I sent you. It's time for another edition of Why Are You Awake? Paul Farahvar here, your host. We have a guest here, one of my favorite comedians, very hilarious. You know him from the David Letterman show. You remember David Letterman?
Yeah, it's funny.
Andy Hendrickson.
Hey, Paul.
That's an inside joke.
Yeah, it's an inside joke because that's
how you brought up last night.
Am I really one of your favorite comedians, or that just like when people bring you up on stage, like
that don't even know you?
Yeah, they're like a really good friend of mine. Like,
no, yeah,
I just met you 5 minutes ago.
I felt like we worked together for the first time in Wesley Chapel, Florida, during COVID, and I felt like I like your style of comedy.
Yeah,
I didn't know who you were, but I told people I was working with you. They're like, he's really good.
Oh, really? As a comedian, I'm always concerned. There's always the little part of your brain that goes, do people like me? Do they think?
Yeah,
do they think so. I'm funny? No, I know you're not supposed to say I think so.
Oh,
I'm just saying that most comedians have there's a little bit of self-doubt always
about being liked or about being funny. Because I don't care if I'm liked. I just want
liked as a comic. I don't care if I'm liked as a person. Actually, that's not true. I like to be liked both ways, as a comedian and a person. I think I'm good at both.
I feel like if somebody doesn't like me but has a strong hatred for me or likes me a lot, I'd rather have that than being different. Does that make sense? But no, I thought we hit it off, and I thought you were really funny. I'm at the point in my career where I like to work with people that make me better or are fun to work with. And anytime I see you working somewhere, I'm like, yeah, I want to work with that guy.
Right. Is it because I'm fun or because I make you better?
You do make me better because I like your. We were just talking about it yesterday. Jim Flanagan and I were watching, and we're like amazed how like you're writing shit on stage, but you're in LA where stage time is hard to get.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you get to write stuff? You're like trying shit out. You told me today you were trying that shit out on stage.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been feeling creative lately. So
yeah.
Sometimes you get in a zone where it just, well, I do, where my mind, I get a lot of good ideas and it lasts for whatever, a couple weeks. And
then it's back to nothing.
Well, I've talked to several comics about this. It's like when you get in a rut in comedy or you're not enjoying comedy, it's usually because you're not doing new stuff. When you have new stuff to get excited about, when you have a reason to go, I'm going on stage tonight, even if I only try out one new bit, or when you finally get that bit working, that's the satisfying thing in comedy. But if you go and you get lazy, which happens sometimes, and you're not pumping out new material, then it starts to feel like, well, why did it even come out tonight if I'm just telling the same jokes?
I definitely agree with you about the exciting thing, but for me, sometimes there's points in your life where you're working out shit for like a special or something like that. You don't get to work on new stuff. You're working on fine-tuning shit.
Right.
Probably you did for specials that you had to do or late night appearances. To me, that's where it's like, it kind of feels like, I don't want to go out and do the same set again.
Yes.
So it isn't always lazy. Sometimes it's work related. But yeah, otherwise, you made an accurate statement on the podcast.
When I did my David Letterman 10 years ago.
Was it 10 years ago?
Yeah. The process was longer for me than most people, I think. And they saw me, when I sent them a tape, then they had a showcase. This was, the new bookers took over, so they were doing it different. And I did 10 minutes on that. And they said, I sent them a 10-minute tape. They said, do, I think, 8 or 7 minutes on this showcase. I did that. It went okay. It was tough for everybody. I kept bugging them. It's a whole thing where you got to bug them without bugging them.
Knowing how often to, yeah, that's with everything.
And you don't get a response, and it's like a big deal to you. They said, send us a tape 5 minutes out of that 8 or whatever that you think you would want to do. So I went around the city, and I'm doing this material over and over and over, trying to put it in order.
In New York at the time?
Yeah, and I finally get it in a nice, perfect order of what I think are my best jokes from that 10 that was whittled down to 8 that was now whittled down to 5. They finally watch it after a few nudges on email, and they're like, yeah, actually, we like these jokes. And they went back to the original 8 minutes from the showcase, and they pulled out. They told me which jokes they wanted me. So then I had to figure out how to piece those together, how to figure out the segue. So I did that set over and over. And then there was a couple more changes, and they finally saw me again live, and then, sending tapes. And my point is, I was so tired of going out and doing the same set over and over and over because I was trying to get the right tape to send to them. By the end of that, I knew every single nuance, every single beat, every little pause. It was like burnt in my brain.
You had a goal that you achieved, and you had to work towards that.
Weirdly, when I got on stage, I
forgot everything.
I know, but I had this weird. My delivery was a little bit more animated than I normally would be. For
Probably
some reason,
jacked up.
I did like a woo, one of those, which I was like, why did I do that? I can't even watch that. Good to be here, podcast.
That's not how I wanted to start the show. The way I wanted to start the podcast was to tell people my sincere admiration for you. And we've done shows elsewhere too. I forgot what city we were in, but we were at an Applebee's late at night once. And
where would that be? Well, for a guy with 8 degrees on the wall.
They're up there. You guys can't see it. I do have a law degree, and we reference it a lot so people know.
So,
and my seat's a little higher than yours, too, to make sure you know who's in charge here.
I feel like you could go to like one of those websites and just put your name in.
A lot of people think it's fake. But let me say how I wanted to start the show. So we just got food at the legendary, one of the best restaurants in America, Portillo's. And I thought you were joking, but you go like, I want a hot dog. I'm like, are you going to get a Chicago style hot dog? You're like, I don't want any of that shit on it. I just want ketchup. And I don't think you know what that does in Chicago. So when you ordered it, I told the woman, I don't know if you heard me. I go, he's just joking.
I know.
I thought you were.
I was
thought,
not.
and she thought you were too. You said that she didn't agree. She
Didn't seem to phase her.
She did. She was like smiling because she's like, "Are these guys jokers?" They knew you were a comedian. But you ordered a ketchup with just a hot dog with just ketchup.
Yeah. And guess what?
In Chicago.
I'll do it again. I will do it again.
You weren't even joking. That's how you eat your hot dog. Yeah, you can't.
No. So listen, I was
People need to know.
thinking about getting a chili cheese dog, which is, I guess, acceptable.
Yes.
Chicago style has too much crap on it, but
Idiot.
I've been here only for about a day and a half, and I've eaten so much meat, and everything here is beef and cheese and unhealthy.
The Midwest is especially Wisconsin. They eat a lot of cheese there too.
Yeah. Do
It's
they have a
true.
higher rate of colon cancer?
I know that they're larger. I know when I bring shirts to sell, merchandise-wise, I always bring 2XL.
Go to Wisconsin, send a
3XL.
box of XX.
Yeah, but I've noticed that there's been a lot of 2XLs everywhere now, including in the South, Florida, all kinds of places. But we're not here to talk about merchandise.
We're here to talk about GLP drugs and how that's going to change.
What's the GLP drug?
Ozempic. And
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing that.
Are you?
Not yet. I want to wait and see what the side effects are. They say it causes eye problems.
There's some other weird side effects. I mean, people have issues with addiction and gambling and that kind of stuff too.
Because you no longer have...
It somehow turns off that gene or whatever.
Well, you no longer have a desire for food, which is supposed to bring joy to your life, but now it's blocking that
whatever
desire.
it inhibits whatever that thing is that makes you want to...
Eat a hot dog.
Yeah.
Ketchup.
Yeah.
You started comedy how long ago?
1998.
Jesus Christ, you're like a legend. Where did you start?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, I always thought you were from Virginia.
No, I am from Virginia, but I moved to Atlanta after I graduated college. WVU, go Mountaineers.
Okay.
West Virginia University.
Oh.
No. That's
difference.
big difference.
Why'd you go to West Virginia?
I
didn't know people.
I kept my grades up, but I hung out with a pack of dudes that were smart guys, but didn't apply themselves, and I was pretty much the only guy that was going to go to college. And
Wait, that's a good school, West Virginia?
No, but it's a fun school. But it's
What'd you
not.
get on your ACT?
It's good now. It's better, much better now. I felt like I got a good education there. We don't need to know about. My
we do.
SAT.
It's part of the. It's actually one of the questions I ask everybody.
Do you?
I do. I did bad, so I'm sure it's lower.
No.
than yours.
Mine's bad. I'll tell you this.
Is it lower than 24?
We didn't have to
Oh, you did SAT.
SATs.
Oh, I don't know what that is. I don't know.
I'll tell you, but it's not representative of my intelligence. I was pretty out of control when I was in high school. But I was smart enough to keep my grades up. But both times I took my SATs twice. Both times the night before I went out and got
Shit can't.
annihilated, got wasted. I think I was like self-sabotaging or something in hindsight, So I got an 890 and then a 990.
Oh, that's low. I know
That's
that.
low. I didn't break 1,000. 1,600 is... You get 200 for signing your name right. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they were saying.
Rumor, yeah.
But I kept up. I had a 3.0, I just was really...
Partier? What? Like
I was skating by. That's what my English teacher told me. She goes, Andy, I know you're a smart guy. You're good. I can tell but you're not going to be able to skate by when you get to college. I remember her telling me that.
And did you skate by in college? West Virginia?
I almost failed out. 1 year I had 11 credits and I got a 1.9. And my parents are like, all right. I was basically an alcoholic in hindsight. I cleaned it up. And then towards the end, I got 1 year. I got 3.8s towards the end.
That's good.
Yeah. I figured it out.
There's ways to cheat in college
Yes.
to make it work. Or not
Yeah.
cheat, but beat the system.
Here's what happened. I went to the beach. I got a job at a pizza place, and I was a hard partier back then, and so this was like the first time I really had a job that I had to be there like 40 hours a week or whatever it was, 35 hours a week. But I was like, if I can go out and get hammered and work for 9 hours, I can go out and get hammered and go to my classes, and so I just made myself go to class, and that made all the difference.
Oh, I thought you would drink before class. You're like, I'm just going to match the energy.
No.
You just sort of get hammered and then go to class.
No, then I was
up.
like, yeah, I basically was like, there's no excuse.
Got it.
Because classes are like, what, they take 3 hours out of your day?
Yeah, and you were working and you were able to show up.
Yeah.
But you were sober at work and in class.
Yes. Although one time I remember I had an advertising professor, great guy. I'm sure he's passed away by now, but Mel Elbaum. He was a Madison Avenue guy from New York that came to teach at West Virginia. I was lucky to have him as a professor, but I was on this advertising competition and we had this whole group and we took like 10th in the country. Long story short, I went in for a morning meeting with him and I'd been out getting shit-faced the night before. And he's talking to me and I'm bleary-eyed. I don't think I showered. I probably smell like cigarettes. Everyone smoked cigarettes in the bars back then.
Still doing West Virginia.
And we finished our meeting. He goes, "You know I can smell the booze on you, right?" I said, "Yeah." In my mind, I thought he was implying that I was drinking that morning. And I was like, "Well, I was out drinking last night, so like I didn't even understand like what's the problem."
Right.
I'm here.
I showed up. Yeah.
So.
Well, he's from New York advertising, so probably they were drinking in the mornings there.
Yeah. He's like, "I'm gonna give you an A."
Getting a head start. You're like, you already figured it out. I didn't watch Mad Men, but
he was like Mad Men.
In high school, what were you like? Were you, because certainly you could tell with certain comedians that they were like in what do you call it, theater and stuff. You don't strike me as a theater guy. You were probably were you like a jock?
I mean, I was a wrestler.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Were you tall back then?
Yeah, I was kind of a tall, lanky wrestler.
I thought wrestlers had to be like short.
No, I was like lanky, but I really got into it there for a couple of years. I was really into it. I went to Iowa. I went to Dan Gable's wrestling school, wrestling camp.
Oh, Dan Gable. Yeah, I know Dan.
But Dan Gable was a legend. He was like the best wrestler. Anyway, I went to that. I went to the Naval Academy wrestling camp, and I was super into it for a while. But I wasn't very successful. I mean, high school, I would say I was friends with like everybody, but I hung out with a bunch of kind of,
smart kids that didn't apply themselves.
Yeah, troublemakers, but yeah.
What kind of trouble were you getting into
we
other
were
than drinking?
And,
breaking laws?
Breaking laws.
What were you doing?
Vandalizing a little bit.
Oh, really? Like what kind of?
Smashing mailbox, stuff like that.
We all did that.
Lots of partying, a few fights.
Were you a night owl in high school? Like, were you staying up late?
Oh, yeah, that's
kind of the theme. But
I've always been a night owl.
Yeah? Not now. You go to bed early now.
That's funny, that story. I'm a bit older than you. When you were in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
And you texted me like, "Hey, man, I'm hanging out at the whatever. I'm going to be at the Comedy Store if you want to hang out or whatever." And I was like, dude, I'm in bed with my wife. Like, I'm going to sleep.
Yeah.
It was like 10:30.
I just got out. Yeah.
You just got out. I was like, it's 10:30. I'm like, and you didn't even, in your mind, that's totally normal. In my mind, I'm like, well, no, I'm going to bed.
So you're not a night owl now. And
I am. I mean,
you still wake up early.
I enjoy the night hours. I don't know why that is.
Did comedy make you a night owl, or were you like even...
I've always been a night owl.
Okay. What would you do at nights when you weren't a comedian? Like before you did comedy, whether it's high school or college, what were you doing?
I don't know. Watch TV, video games, partying.
You weren't bringing anything to the table, as they say.
I've always just been creative. Some of my buddies from high school were some of the funniest dudes, and so I'm not even like the funniest out of those guys.
I say that too. A lot of my funniest friends in my fraternity and younger were way funnier than me.
Some of my buddies now, so I'm in the fantasy football league, same guys, like 30-something years.
They're like, use this. You could use this.
When your friend goes, "You could use this," you're like, "Yeah, that's been done, dude." Whatever you thought of. Or it's super vulgar. You're like, "Dude, I'm not doing it." Or it's sexist or something. You're like, "No, dude.
That's not going to work." Although now it will. The new America.
The new America. You can do whatever you want.
So.
New America.
Were you getting in trouble? Like you said, you got in trouble like in high school. You're hanging out with these. What about in college? You were just working, so you were kind of responsible.
No, I got in trouble in college too. The pizza place was when I was at the beach in between. Yeah, I went to jail a couple times. College,
are you allowed to
drinking
say?
Stuff?
Yeah, let's leave it at that.
We'll leave it
as
at
your
that.
lawyer, law degree.
Oh yeah.
So what happened after college? You majored in what? Advertising?
Yeah. 93. I graduated. That's definitely aging myself, but I don't care anymore. I really don't give a shit about all that stuff anymore. But I used to kind of hide my age. But
yeah, I still do.
Yeah. Well, I really don't give a fuck. But Yeah, I moved to Atlanta because that was 93. The country was in a bit of a recession, and Atlanta was one of the cities that was kind of growing.
For advertising, or just went there because?
Just because.
Okay.
I didn't know where I went, but there seemed to be a few handfuls of people from WVU that were like, Atlanta, that's the city. Let's all go to the city. And I went down there in the spring on my spring break, and the weather was perfect, and all the flowers and everything. You know, it's really pretty down there in the spring. It was like perfect. I was like, I love this place. I'd never been there. I'm moving here. And then I moved down in June. I drove from my mom's near D.C., Northern Virginia. I had a Toyota Corolla with no air conditioning, and there was a heat wave.
Oh, yeah.
I had to drive like whatever it is. It takes like 10 hours in a heat wave. There's no escaping the heat. You have no air conditioning. I almost cried. It was so horrible because you're just in the heat, it was like so hot. So I would stop at the gas station. I would buy these gallons of just water. And I didn't care. I just in the car, I just pour it on my head while I'm driving.
Yeah.
At some point, we took our furniture down there. That was
me
and my buddies from college.
Oh, so you went together?
Yeah.
To Atlanta. Okay,
Yeah. I think what happened is we took a U-Haul down there. We took all our stuff down there, and then I flew back home to get my car.
Got it.
The U-Haul broke down. That was when it was hot. But we broke down. We went into a sign shop and to use the phone. This is before cell phones. And I was looking around this sign shop, and I was like, "This is cool, man." I've always been into like graphic design and creative kind of stuff, or drawing, and I'm a little bit, I have an artistic side, and
a guitarist too.
So that stuck in my head for some reason that I liked that, and I used to sit there and doodle and make my own fonts and all that kind of stuff. I don't know why I couldn't get a job in advertising. I shouldn't have been at the beach party, and I should have been, learning about advertising and taking a internship, and no one would give me a job. It was a tough market back then, so I ended up working at a sign company making signs, and did that for years. And then I started dabbling with comedy
in Atlanta.
Why'd
you start that?
I always liked it. I remember when we lived in Hawaii when I was a kid. There used to be a military family. There was this guy named Poi Dog
Pondering. Different guy. That's the poster up there.
And Poi Dog did sketches, and he had a lot of, there's, Hawaiian, they call it the pidgin English. Our family used to sit around and listen to those and laugh. And so that was my exposure to comedy. I always liked it if I was up late enough to see it on Johnny Carson or
You'd stay up to watch.
HBO. If my friend had HBO, I'd be like, oh, let's watch this comedy thing. When I was down in Florida, my brother's a military. We were down in Key West, I think it was. I don't remember the name of the club. I'm assuming it was maybe like a Coconuts or something.
Probably, yeah.
And I don't know. I wish I remembered the name of the comedian, but he was very funny. Of course, back then I laughed. I didn't know what hacky was or whatever.
Yeah.
That was my first time in a comedy club, and I was like, what is this, dude? This is awesome.
How old were you?
19.
Okay.
I've always been funny. I was playing your guitar. College, I used to sit on the steps. I was in a fraternity, and like people walk by, I'd make funny songs up. I'd make people laugh. I was in Atlanta. On the news, there was a dude who taught a comedy class. Back then, there was no internet. I couldn't believe that there was a way to. For me, it was like, this will force me to do it if I sign up. It was like $200 that I didn't have. By the end of it, you have to do your 5 minutes. I was like, I'm going to do it because it's going to make me do it. It's going to force me. Financially, I'm committed. The first day I showed up at the class, and I goofed around. I think we were supposed to come in with like 3 jokes on the first week or the second week, and I goofed around. I didn't have any good jokes, and I was so embarrassed by being out-funnied by like housewives. I was like, I'm going to be the funniest person in this class. That was and I just started writing I was really worked hard at it. And I did. I had the best. I think I had the best.
There was 7 people in the class?
There was 2 people. Yeah.
You and 2 housewives?
One and, this housewife who was.
Gwen and Brenda? Yeah.
Yeah, and Brenda. She was drunk most of the time. And I remember I got up on stage, I think it was the next night, at the open mic at the Punchline. And I had a real crowd, and I did okay in front of a real crowd. And that was in my head like, okay, because I knew that the comedy class audience was like, you're going to get the best crowd you're ever going to get in your life. I've talked to other comics about this, but you get calloused. I could have back in the day. I'll give you the two situations where I can remember, just for whatever reason, my humor in the crowd, it jived. I'm hitting every note. I'm in the zone and just killing. Or for me, whatever at the time as a new comic, I was like, I hit a new level and another gear, just killing. And I remember feeling like euphoric for like maybe an hour or two after, like I took drugs. And then on the other side of that, if you bombed when you're new, you felt it. I mean, it sits with you for a while.
Sure. But you also had a job before you did that. So like what I always tell people, like when I bomb, unless it's like 2 bombs in a row or like it starts mentally hitting you, you kind of still, your self-worth starts to be questioned, decisions, everything you make. But at least for me, I'm like, well, at least I was a lawyer. I can go back to that. I remember I was going to quit comedy a couple times. But for these younger comics who start at 19 and then they bomb, it's like, that's like their whole self-identity. You still had like some identity beyond that when you bombed.
I did, but I went full-time 4 years in.
Okay.
I had the exhibit job. I worked for another company who we did similar stuff. We built real estate sales centers. But I got fired from that job 5 months in, and I was 32, and I was like, I could do more of this sign stuff, which I don't like that much, or I can try and become a comedian.
But you started in the 90s where there wasn't the comedy boom. It was after the comedy
Everyone
boom.
told me this is the worst time to get into comedy.
Right.
But I did anyway. I called up my old sign. He was cool. He's like, told him what I want to do, and he's like, I'll give you part-time work. He was cool. He let me go on the road for like 2 weeks at a time, and I was able to eventually build up enough, connections and road work where I was like, I'm going full-time.
You're going full-time in what's like 2000s? Is it
2002,
2002 from Atlanta, right?
Yes.
You were still based in Atlanta. So how did that work?
No, that's not true. The woman my girlfriend, we broke up. We were living together. I was like, well, I'm just going to move in with my mom temporarily until I figure this out. I didn't have another source of income that's probably why we broke. Part of the reason we broke up, because I was like, hey, I'm going to be gone again. I lived at my mom's for like 4.5 years or something. And I just did the road hard. I think one year I did, just counting a weekend as a week, but I did 49 weeks out of the 52.
And that's 4 years in.
No, that was probably like 6 years in or something like that, or 7 years.
And how were the comedy shows back then when they say it's the worst time? Were there still some
They're
good?
Great.
Yeah. People don't know.
I started off kind of hosting and middling. Back then you could actually host and make a little bit of money, and they'd put you up. And then I just started, and since I didn't have rent, my mom didn't charge me rent. I was able to live off of the $400, $500 a week or whatever it was. And that's all I did. Comedy. Filled my schedule. I mean, I was relentless. I remember my buddies going like, what are you doing? Like,
your non-comedy buddies, you mean?
Yeah, like they were like, you're crazy. Hendrickson's crazy. I drove from like Atlanta to La Crosse, Wisconsin. It was supposed to take 14 hours. It took 16 hours. I get there, I splash water in my face, take a piss, and hop on stage like right away.
Yeah.
Even then, I was like, "What? This is crazy. What am I doing?" There was never ever a thought of, "I'm not going to do this." It was like, "This is what I'm doing." So
you're doing the tours. You're 6 years in. You lived with your mom. You put away some cash.
A little bit, yeah.
And then did you go to New York then?
Yeah. I finally got a little bit into the college market, which paid a little bit better than, I had saved up just a little bit of money, and I moved up to New York, moved in with Keith Alberstadt, who's a great comic, good dude.
One of my favorites as well.
He's awesome, yeah. It's funny, at that point I was probably middling and headlining some, about half and half. And I was just so sure of myself that I was like, I'm funny, man. I'm going to get to New York, and then it's like a big slap. I was warned, but I didn't want to believe it. I was confident in myself as far as being a comedian, and it's like a giant slap in the face, dude. It's like, this guy's been here 20 years and he's super funny and he's been on TV 10 times. So get in line, buddy.
Right. But you made it work.
Yeah, that was really hard too.
Back in the day before you moved to New York, you're on the road and you're doing these shows at the time where it's supposedly not the time where comedy was booming like it is now. What was it like after the shows? Were you like, they put you up still, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're in these small towns in La Crosse, Wisconsin or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing after the shows? Were you like partying then?
Oh,
Were you
yeah.
So you'd go out with, would you go out with the other comedians or would just
whoever wanted to go out?
You didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
That's
Whoever wanted to go
crazy.
out. The other comedian, I'd be like, hey, man. I remember one time being in like North Dakota or South Dakota or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was part of a series of one-nighters. It's a run. We used to call it, a run. I can't remember the guy's name. He reminded me of Frasier. Frasier from the TV show.
Okay.
Kelsey Grammer. And we did this show. There weren't that many people. It was in this depressing hotel in this depressing town. I was like, come on, man, let's go out. He's like, he looked at me like, what? Why? What do we do? It's a Wednesday. It's the first night of there's nothing to do. The show sucked.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to your room. He's like, I remember him being like, what's your deal? And I just remember thinking like, this guy's old. But I was in it for the party too, for a while.
Right.
And then when I got to New York, I quickly realized you really got to put in the work if you want to be good.
In terms of doing a bunch of shows? And then hang out.
Writing. No. Put in the show, do the work. I mean,
right.
Keith was a good example because he was very great comic, but he was very diligent. He would get up and he had a schedule and he treated it like a job, and I learned from that.
What would you do when you lived in New York? Were you waking up and writing, or were you writing late at night? How were you doing it?
Yeah, meeting up with comics, going down to the coffee shop.
During the day, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Writing.
What were you doing after the shows in New York?
That's the best, worst advice I ever got, by the way.
What's that?
I remember talking to this guy's name was Joe Morrison. If he's out there, I don't think he does comedy anymore, but I remember having a good show at the Punchline in Atlanta, and Joe was already a headliner at that point. Pretty early in my career. I was maybe just emceeing or something. You're a headliner, man. You're working on the road. How do I do? And he goes, I hate to tell you this, but it's get on stage and write. That's it. Everyone thinks there's a shortcut. It's get on stage as much as possible and write all the time.
That's good advice.
It's good advice, but you don't want to hear it. You want some secret shortcut.
There's no shortcuts.
No.
Yeah, we'll talk about
There is
that.
shortcuts. Crowd work.
Well, I think the social media, there's a backlash that's slowly happening with the people who had shortcuts that weren't prepared. So in New York, what are you doing after your shows then when you realized, okay, I can't go party all the time? What were you doing?
A lot of diners. That's why I have an affinity for diners. I think a lot of
So
comics
amazing,
do.
yeah.
There's nothing better than sitting around after a show with a few comics and just, shooting the shit and talking about comedy and the history of comedy and jokes and writing jokes and how things go in the show. What was talking about gig experiences you had. That's just like, it's the best.
That's part of it's part of the greatest parts about doing shows, which is why I like working with people that are like fun and not annoying.
Yeah.
You know.
Let me interrupt you. I'm just kidding. I was being annoying.
Are you,
No.
Are you, but now you don't crave that. You don't want to hang out after shows. You're going to bed at 10:30 with your wife.
Well, if it's the right people, yeah, sure. Sometimes on the road.
Yeah.
But when I'm home, I even had to force myself in LA sometimes just to hang a little bit after the show, after I'm done performing. But
it's a little harder there, I think, too, because you're like, and I love LA. I love my shows there are always fun, but it's
here
always.
We go. Let's preface it with a compliment.
No, I do, but I just feel like sometimes there's like dick measuring contests in a way, or like, what is this person going to bring to me? If you don't bring anything to the table, they don't want to talk to you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which that doesn't happen so much on the road. I feel like,
no.
I guess it does because we're coming there. And so everyone wants to talk to you about how comedy scene is where.
Well, on the road, you're the headliner.
Right.
Or you're the middle or whatever it was, and like, that's it. When you're in LA, it's several people trying. I can remember when I first moved out there, or when I first used to visit LA, I very much thought that. And people would talk about this all the time. Like, you would go down to the Improv and you see somebody that you know, but you maybe met on the road or whatever, a big name guy. And
yeah.
You're talking to him. Oh, man, at least there's somebody I know. Let me go over there and talk to him.
And
then you're talking to him, and they're talking to you, but they're looking up over
Who
you
else
to
can I
see
talk
who
to?
else can I talk to. Everyone's
That's
like,
what I'm
what's my
talking
next
about.
opportunity? Yeah. Now I don't even pick up on it. I'm so old comic. Like I don't care who. If you want to be that way, cool. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And look, I know I'm not going to say any names, but I know several comedians who are, let's just call them opportunists, they have their eye on the prize. That's a better way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done very well.
It's worked for them. Yeah.
Yeah, because
you need to have that a little bit. The hustle.
Yeah, you got to kind of be like, I'm out here. Yeah, I'm out here to having fun and hanging with the comics. But it's also a job, and so that person there, whatever, they write on this show, or they know this manager or whatever. So
it's going to help you.
I get it. I never had that instinct.
Well, you need that.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm here doing your podcast.
How long were you in New York before you?
I was just like, I'm just going to be super funny, and guess what? That doesn't work either.
It does to some extent.
Exactly. To some extent. That's my career. To some extent.
Your next special
will
be called To Some Extent. How long were you in New York for?
It was only a little bit less than 8 years.
Okay.
But it felt much longer because there was so much packed into that.
Yeah.
8 years. It's like when you're a kid, the summer seems to last forever. That's the same thing I think of New York. There was so much ups and downs, and all of us comedians were all going through it. And then, we all started having success, and then your friends are out on the road, and then people start settling, getting married and having kids. And I remember towards the end of it, I did Letterman. Like I think about a year later, I did the Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson. I had focused so hard on that goal.
The Letterman goal.
The Letterman goal.
Yeah, you talked to me about that.
Yeah, once I got it, I call it the 3-day birthday. You announce it, then you do it, and then the day after, everyone tells you about it, how great it was or whatever, and then it's like back to normal.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like life-changing or anything, and I was just like, well, what now?
Well, at the time, that helped you. That was a big bump for your career.
It was
money and opportunities.
It gave me more opportunities. It was a great calling card. I remember I listened to this book called Round Ireland with the Fridge. I was doing some shows I'd done some shows over in England. And
Round Ireland
with the Fridge.
The Fridge from the Chicago Bears? William the Refrigerator Perry?
No.
Oh,
an
different.
Actual refrigerator.
Oh, okay.
It's an interesting book, and it speaks to the kindness and openness of the Irish. And it was about, I've always liked, I worked with some
being kind.
Irish?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the Irish are great. Irish people. The Ireland people who live in Ireland?
Maybe to other Irish people.
No. Well, maybe they don't like it. What are you?
Yeah.
Ashcam?
Exactly.
No, the Irish they're genuine, and they're open, and they're funny. And anyway,
So the book says that. Yeah.
This book was about this guy who had a drunken bet that he said he bet this guy he could get around the circumference of Ireland with a refrigerator with no money. I don't know how he didn't even remember how the bet, but he woke up and the bet was written down and he did it. He had it on a dolly, and he starts walking and people are like, "Well, what are you doing there?" And he's like, I got a bet. I had a drunken bet." And they're like, "Well, you need a ride? Yeah, I'll take you to town. You know what? We got an extra bedroom, blah, blah, blah." And then the guy on the local radio found out about it and was like, "Hey, the guy with the fridge is coming to your town. Pick him up." And then people welcomed him. And it's a cool book.
What's the moral of the story?
The moral of the
People
story
are
was
kind in Ireland?
Yeah. It was just like an interesting.
What does that have to do with Letterman?
Well, I'll get to it. Maybe that's why the Irish aren't so nice to you. Because you don't let people finish their stories.
I
did Letterman, and because of I loved that book so much, I decided to try and do a tour around Ireland.
Oh.
And because I had a Letterman, they respected that, and I was able to do all these clubs. I went for 10 days, and I had the best trip of my life. It was so awesome.
Your jokes translate?
Oh, yes. My dry kind of humor, like,
yeah.
It does well in England and Ireland.
Did they all know about this book? Is it like a famous book?
No, I don't know. My brother's friend gave it to me, told me about it. And
I've never heard of this book, and I read a lot of books. As you saw, all the books I read.
I really enjoyed it.
Well, you didn't read it. You audio taped it.
Yeah.
That doesn't really
Well,
count.
it's because I used to drive so much. But, again, I can see why the Irish don't really.
You do Letterman. You were laser focused on it. You didn't have any goals after that because you accomplished whatever. I mean, at the time.
I went to New York. I got into the Comedy Cellar, which was like huge. That was a big part of it. Then I got Letterman. After that, I thought that was such, I don't know. I just thought it was going to change everything or fill the whatever that void was.
The void that we all, the love from our dad that we didn't get. Yeah, I get it.
And the cat's in the cradle. And so, but it didn't. And I felt like I'd accomplished what I wanted there. And so I decided to move to L.A. And no real specific reason other than a change of scenery. That was a really hard decision because New York, when you live there, it feels like the whole universe is right there. Probably like Chicago feels a little bit.
Well, also getting up in New York once you're with your
once
credits.
you establish, yeah. I mean, when I lived in New York, it was great. Once I established myself, I got almost as much spots as I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
People reached out to me all the time. Do you want to do my show? Do you want? I got a lot of good.
Did you try to get on any like writing shows or anything? Like, is that not?
Yeah,
was it on your radar?
I submitted to. A lot of people did those Saturday Night Live Weekend Update.
Right.
You could submit jokes for that.
But you weren't a good writer because of the SAT scores, right?
Right. Yeah.
They're like, ooh, West Virginia. Sorry.
Yeah.
You need to have like Harvard.
Yeah, Ivy League. And then LA I was doing commercial auditions and I went and did some acting classes and stuff like that, but I realized that like if you want to be a good actor, it's just like comedy. You have to in my mind, you better put the time in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't do that again. I'm not going to go through that. So I feel like I could still be a good actor if it was a character that's pretty like a shade away from me as I am now.
Yeah.
If I play myself or something close to myself, I could do that.
It's funny because the roles...
Don't make me angry. See?
Yeah.
I was smiling when I said it. On 30 Rock. It's funny because I got it on IMDb. It was called a featured extra or something. I was doing auditions and stuff in New York. Not a lot of acting stuff, but mostly commercial auditions or whatever. My headshot was out there, and I had a gig in San Antonio. And I get a call from some casting agent says, "Hey, I see your resume here. I do casting for 30 Rock." I'm like, I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe it. I was first super excited. She's like, "We got a role. It's called featured extra, but it'll help you get your
SAG card.
Your SAG card, yeah." And she's like, "It says on your thing that you work well with animals. I can't remember what I put on there. Something because I like animals, And is that true?" And I was like, yeah, it is. She's like, "Would you be comfortable handling a peacock?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not? Sure. Sounds great." "Okay, well, come down here. You need to bring you're going to be playing a legal assistant for this one scene. And that's right. You're supposed to that's what she said. You're supposed to hand a peacock to Alec Baldwin's character." And I'm like, this is fucking awesome. Yes, I'm in. So I had to push back my San Antonio gig, and I go down there, and I was all excited about this, and it's a scene where they're reading a will in a lawyer's office, and I'm supposed to be a legal assistant, and I'm supposed to hand Alec his character apparently inherits this peacock from the rich person that died or something like that. And I'm up in wardrobe, and there's this flamboyant gay guy who's the wardrobe guy, and he keeps fucking with the cuff of my thing. He's like, "See, it's not sticking out." Everyone else is done. They start going down there. There's a guy who's in charge of all of the extras. He keeps messing with this. He's like, "Hold on, let me go get a pin. No, I don't like this tie, da-da-da." And I'm like, "Come on, dude." And the guy's like, "We'll come back for you." The guy comes back. He goes, "Hey, Andy, I'm sorry. We already did the rehearsal. I had to give the peacock role to somebody else." And my joke is that guy peacock blocked me. But
That's great.
I ended up getting in the scene anyway. I'm just in the background, like doodling in a notepad or whatever. Anyway, that was in my IMDb. At the time, I was like hungry for a credit, so I said, and you've seen him on 30 Rock, but it's really just the camera panning, and I'm there for like maybe 4 seconds. But then the other funny part about that story is that there was a snowstorm, so I had to fly out to San Antonio 2 days late, and I had a rental car. The snowstorm, I ended up flying. I had to go from LaGuardia all the way to Newark to catch a different flight because of the snowstorm. So I tried to call my rental car company, which was Alamo, and in San Antonio, and I'm like, it was like straight out of Who's On First. I was like, she's like, hello, Alamo. I'm like, yeah, I'm calling. I just looked the phone number up really quick. I was tired in my phone, and I hit the button to call, and she said, Alamo. I was like, yeah, I'm calling about my reservation. I'm going to be coming in late. And she's like, I don't understand. What do you? I'm like, I got a reservation. I'm coming in. I just want to make sure you keep my reservation. And she's like, sir, I don't know. I was like, this is the Alamo, right? She's like, yeah. She said, yeah, this is the Alamo. And I'm like, can I talk to your manager or somebody? I don't understand what's going on. she puts this woman on. She's like, hi, this the Alamo or whatever. And I was too tired and pissed off to like, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I got a reservation for my car. And she's like, sir, this is the Alamo. Like, don't forget the Alamo. Yeah. Never forget the Alamo or whatever the hell it is. And that's what happened there.
Well, that's interesting.
What's the phrase?
Remember the Alamo.
Remember the Alamo.
You clearly didn't remember it. Where can people find out more about you and your upcoming shows and stuff?
Instagram at Andy Hendrickson, website andyhendrickson.com.
Thank you for joining us, Andy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul Farahvar,
Esquire. And thank you all for watching or listening. Go to sleep.